Hey guys, how's it going? This video today is a little bit of a tip on your Star BM 9mm. Now, a couple weeks ago, I did a video on this and a couple other pistols, and I was basically recommending some cheap or budget military surplus guns that are still available that I thought are a great value, either for a shooter or for someone getting into collecting Milsurps or possibly even, concealed carry or home defense. And this one's one of the best ones right now, I think, for the money, guys. Currently available at a couple places for 180 bucks. Now, these are solid steel guns, very, very well built, and they're kind of a 1911, if you will. Now, when I say 1911, I say that kind of loosely. They look like a 1911, have some of the same manual of arms, single action, slide mounted safety. The triggers are different, and some of the internals and the way it functions are also different. But I think for all intents and purposes, because none of us here are experts, at least I'm not, we can call this kind of a little 9mm commander size 1911 clone. Well, when I was doing my initial video, I dry fired this gun a couple times, and one of my viewers said, hey, you should know better not to be dry firing your Star. And you know what? I appreciate you guys' comments. I really do. And by that comment, it gave me a good idea to do this video today. Now, with your Star, the way they work is a little bit different than a lot of the more modern style firearms that you're familiar with. So, let's just say with this Taurus G2C right here, okay? This gun currently has a snap cap in it. I can sit here for dry firing and I can pull this trigger all day long, cycle it, pull the trigger again. No damage, no harm. Obviously, even dry firing, in my opinion, should be done in a safe direction with or without a snap cap. I can chuck this snap cap out of here and I can still dry fire it till the cows come home, and I'm not going to do any damage. That's this gun. Now the Stars, it's not quite so simple. So Stars have kind of a little bit of a variable and a little bit of variance in their firing pins, and I'm going to try to keep this video under an hour, so I'll be very brief, guys. But there's a lot to this that you can look up on your own later. Again, I'm not an expert, just trying to help you guys out a little bit, So, basically with the Stars, they used varying different lengths of firing pins throughout the years of production. Now, keep in mind, these guns went through from the early 70s all the way up to the early 90s. And right here next to me, I have a 1979 example and an example from 92. Now, a lot of the Stars have a non-inertia firing pin. And what this means is that even after you let up on the trigger, the firing pin protrudes through the breech face, right? And if you go to push back on it, it does not just simply release back like a lot of modern guns. So, what can happen with the Star is a couple things. First of all, let's get the safety things out of the way first. I would probably generally recommend not to use this as your carry gun, and I'm not really going to give you guys any advice because, again, I'm not an expert or a trainer. But if this gun were to be carried with a round in the chamber, in my opinion, it should only be carried cocked and locked. It's really the only safe way to carry this gun with a round in the chamber, because while some guns have things like decockers, which this does not, and other guns have a trigger block safety, right? This does not. So basically what's going to happen is if there's a round in the chamber of this gun, and obviously we know if you just pull the trigger, the hammer's going to go forward, it's going to hit the firing pin, overcome the spring, which most of them have, and it's going to hit the round and come back. Well, on a lot of guns you can do something like this. You can, now this gun is empty, okay, completely empty, nothing in the mag or in the chamber. What you can do on a lot of guns is you can take and put your finger right here. You can pull the trigger, you're going to feel the hammer start to come forward, take your finger off the trigger, and then you could gently let it go home. Now, this is an okay method to do. I will notice when you do that on this gun, it's going to go into like a half cock position where the hammer is not all the way forward, but also not to the rear. And in this position, you can pull the trigger, nothing's going to happen. You also cannot actuate the safety because the hammer's in a half cock. I would not recommend this as a way to carry this gun, but I'm just showing you guys it does have a half cock. Now, with that said, keep in mind, if you were to keep your finger on the trigger, okay, and instead of doing what I did, putting my finger in here, letting my finger off, I'll show you that one more time, it went into a half cock. Now, if you did it just a little bit different, and you kept your finger back here on the hammer, right, the hammer spur, pulled the trigger, kept the trigger down, and just let it gently rest, there's a very good chance you're going to have a negligent discharge with this gun. So I want to get that out in the open. Now, with the firing pins. In general, there's two styles of firing pins they used in these stars. And I would note, when they put these guns together, they relied heavily on custom hand-fitted firing pins. So basically the firing pins would be fitted to each gun as they were put in the star factory. And there's varying lengths. So there's what's generally referred to as the longer firing pins that protrude through, again, through the breech face, right? That will contact the primer even if you gently ease the hammer forward, it's still going to protrude through, and it's not going to be able to bounce back like how they do a lot of times. It's actually going to detonate the round. That's the one type, the longer type. Now there's also a shorter type. What gun does yours have? Well, you would have to take it apart to prove, and I would note, the way these firing pins are installed on these guns is you actually have to, right underneath the rear sight, there's a pin that goes through and a little, like, slot, if you would, or a little chamfered ground down area of the firing pin that actually retains the firing pin. Now, here's what can happen. Besides the obvious safety features of, you know, dry firing this gun or trying to ease the hammer down on a live chamber, which I don't recommend, guys. I'm not gonna, just because I'm not qualified, I'm not gonna recommend carrying this gun really at all. But if you were to carry it with a round in the chamber, carry it cocked and locked. It's the only reasonably safe way to do it. But with that said, if you're dry firing these guns, now this does depend on what type of firing pin you have. And I wish this was more simple, but it's just not. You could risk breaking your firing pin. Now, getting firing pins for these guns can be expensive because it's not just as simple as just getting a firing pin. You may find one that drops in just fine. I don't know if they still have them in stock, but at one time Numerich had them. But you still may have to hand fit it because, again, these were generally hand fitted on a custom basis for each gun. But you also have the two different styles of firing pins, the shorter one and the longer one. And even of the longer ones, you'll find varying lengths. So it gets kind of complicated. So the best thing is to probably not dry fire this gun without a snap cap because you don't want to risk breaking the firing pin. You're going to have an expense. And if you're not used to these guns, it's rather complicated and can be a hard task for a lot of people to actually replace these firing pins. It's not going to take you 2 seconds like in your Glock or in your Taurus G2C or whatever. So I'm going to show you guys snap cap. Now you guys should already know what these are. If not, look them up. What a snap cap is, it's basically a case with a projectile, and where the primer would be, there's going to be a special type of rubber in there. Now this rubber is soft enough to where it's going to absorb the concussion of the firing pin, but it's going to give it a little cushion, so it's going to simulate the firing pin hitting the primer. Now why is that important? Well, with a non-inertia firing pin, it's only meant to travel so far, and it's going to make contact with the primer, which is going to stop the firing pin. Makes sense, right? Well, if there's nothing in the chamber, it's going to be able to just slam forward. Well, you know how that can work. If you slam steel together, especially different hardnesses of steel, it can break and it can crack. And anyone that's owned pistols for a long time knows a firing pin can break. Maybe not very often, but it's a thing, right? So what these snap caps are going to do is allow you to safely dry fire your gun. So we're just going to load it up. Now these are pretty nice ones real quick. I'll show you these. These are available on Amazon, for example. These are loaded to the exact weight and dimensions. So there's actually some sort of metal with like a nice epoxy paint over the bullet tip. But these actually feel just like a regular 9mm round. Here's some orange ones. The same company, you can buy them in a 5-pack. The same company sells these blue ones in a 10-pack. I like these the best because they feed like nothing. They're really like real ammo for all intents and purposes, except for they obviously cannot fire. There's no gunpowder in here, right? There's no real primer, just this like little soft pocket that's going to act as a dampener for your firing pin. So we can load this in here. We'll load a couple of them in here. Why not? And this is just going to act like chambering a real round. Okay? Now, I know that I just chambered it, but here's the thing with snap cap, guys, and I want to warn you if you're not used to these. It's generally not a good idea in a way to pull the trigger, right, when you know a round's in there. So I always check, you know? And if I had snap caps sitting in this gun and it was stored with a snap cap, and even if I remember it 100%, I am not just going to dry fire it. This is just common sense safety. I'm going to take a peek in there, make sure I can see that orange. Now I know that it's a snap cap. Okay, I'm good to go. So now I can sit here and dry fire this gun for practice to get used to trigger control. I'm not worried about it anymore. This snap cap with that special rubbery type substance, it's made for this, and it's going to absorb the concussion. You know, so there's not that sharp impulse of the firing pin smacking up against the internals of the slide, right? So definitely, if you guys are going to dry fire these, use a snap cap. Why not? You may or may not have a shorter inertia firing pin. You may or may not have the longer non-inertia firing pin. Look, if you guys want to geek out on this, you can take it apart and determine whether yours is safe to dry fire. But for most of you that are just getting into Milsurps, or maybe you have a million Milsurps, but you're not familiar with this gun, I'm just going to strongly recommend that you guys fire these with snap caps. And be real careful how you carry this gun with a round in the chamber, remembering all the stuff I said earlier. So you guys are big boys and girls. I'm not going to try to educate you. I'm not even qualified to educate you on your safety. But I just want to bring that to your attention that yes, there's a chance, no matter how gently you ease this firing, this hammer home rather, that firing pin can stay protruded into the primer and either go off immediately or maybe just a little jarring or a shake of the gun. So just keep in mind, this firing pin system might not work exactly the way you think it does, and it's probably going to be a lot different than your average pistol that you've been dealing with. But yeah, snap caps, great investment, guys. You can use these. I think the company that makes these, which is Be Unique Enterprises, like I said, I just bought these on Amazon, nothing fancy, easy to get these. I think they said you can fire them thousands of times. So if you wear a little snap cap out, they average about $2 a piece or so, $2 to $3 a piece, depending if you buy the 5-pack or the 10-pack. If you're dry firing a couple thousand times and you wear one of these guys out, well, you probably got your money's worth, right? So yeah, fire with a snap cap. I can simulate ejecting a round, right? Flew right out of there, just like a regular round would. Landed right in my pocket. That's good. And chamber the next round. In this case, snap cap. Pull the trigger. Single action only, obviously. So I can practice cocking the hammer. And you can just feel it, too, when you have a snap cap in place. It has that dull thud rather than a ting. So, yep. Use the snap caps, guys. Hopefully this helps you. And I do thank the viewer. I'm sorry I can't remember your name right now, but you left a comment saying, hey, man, you should know better. Well, yeah. And the fact is, stars are complicated. And the one that I was particularly dry firing that day, oh, by the way, I'll show this in another video. Brand new, official star holster. This is actually the genuine product that was issued with these. But, you know, there's a 1992 in here. And chances are with this being a 1992, last year production, I kind of showed in the stream some of the differences. Maybe I'll do a standalone video. There's some, you know, external differences on the 92 versus the 79. This probably has the shorter firing pin in here. Probably wouldn't hurt this gun to dry fire it. But you know what? See, snap capping this one. It's just not worth the risk, guys. Why buy a firing pin that may not fit? You may have to get one custom made. I've seen sites that make custom firing pins for these for like $70 plus shipping. That's not cheap. You could go buy a surplus firing pin, find that you have to do some custom hand fitting, which some people don't want to do or aren't good at. So yeah, not to scare you away from these guns, guys. Let me conclude with this: $180, great gun. You'll be able to fire a lot of rounds with them. Very, very heavy duty, solid steel frame construction. And as I showed in my other video, These are very, very well made guns, guys. Very smooth actions. They just feel like quality. And these aren't really $180 guns, let's face it. They're only 180 bucks because they're available right now on the surplus market. I think these are starting to dry up because I'm noticing some of the hand select options and stuff on some of the sites are going away. So I still strongly recommend getting this gun. Just if you want to dry fire, use the snap caps. Learn how to carry this gun safely if it's going to be your carry gun, if it is. And yeah, and if you already own it, get yourself some snap caps. It's just not worth it with these firing pins to risk it. So hopefully this video helped you guys out. I know it's a little boring, but there's just so many of these little guns running around right now, and for good reason. Great gun for the money. I'd hate to see you guys breaking firing pins. And if I did show a bad example by dry firing mine in my video that I did a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't explain to you that, look, I'm dry firing this one because this is more of the updated firing pin model. Whatever. I'm just going to say as a blanket rule of thumb, I should have shown you guys snap caps in the first video, but hopefully this video makes up for it and helps you guys out. So enjoy your little Star BMs. Couldn't recommend them more. Awesome little guns for the money. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching and have a good one.